It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC. 1-800-222-5222. Your emails at randykabc@gmail.com and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. If there's one thing people who aren't from California know, is that California is expensive. If there's one thing people who live in California know, California is expensive. And there are a lot of different factors as to why California is so expensive to live in. But one of the things that you notice if you ever travel outside of the state is as soon as you go into Arizona or Nevada or New Mexico or Texas, you drive past a gas station and what do you see? Gas for $2.50 a gallon. In California, we're anywhere between $4.50 to $6.50, depending on where you are. And what do you know? It looks like those prices may be going up yet again because in the next 6 months, not one, but two refineries in the state of California are set to close their doors, which would be about 20% of the refining capacity of the state, which just based on economics alone will tell you gasoline is going to go up, and gasoline makes everything go up. To talk to us about this and much, much more, I am proud to welcome back to the News Blitz the current District 1 Supervisor of the Orange County Board of Supervisors and former State Senator Janet Nguyen. Welcome back to the News Blitz.
Hi, Randy. Thank you for having me.
Supervisor Nguyen, how did we get here?
Well, it's official. Governor Gavin Newsom and his quest for zero emissions by 2045 has all but killed the oil industry in California. As you and probably most of your audience have heard, listener has heard, Phillips 66 is now leaving next month, and his talks to keep Vallejo here have collapsed completely. Energy Trade News just reported that. Now we have only 9 refineries in California, so we are importing 90% of our oil. So you know what that means. Experts have already said it could reach $8 a gallon.
Yeah, and we've seen projections like that coming out of a study of USC. Some of our refineries aren't even doing oil at this point. They're doing ethanol, which Gavin signed a plan to increase the ethanol capacity and add an ethanol dispenser at gas stations, even though 90% of cars on the road can't handle that gas.
He's also trying to get gas stations to turn into electrical station, which most cars in California are not electrical. It's so expensive just to buy an electrical car.
Well, and as an owner of an electric car, I'll tell you, if you own your own home and you paid for a charger in your driveway, makes perfect sense. You try to go on a road trip with one of these things unless you own a Tesla, and the networks are a mess. There's so many different companies. You need an app for each one. A lot of these things don't work. We've actually seen quite a few electric charger stations break down because of copper wire theft and things. We don't have the infrastructure to support everyone driving an electric car, and I don't see us getting anywhere close to that anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't see so either. I mean, it's just very obvious that Newsom has an energy obsession, a green energy obsession. I fought against all this. And you're right, because when I was in Sacramento, we had our Senate hearing in regards to the zero emission and green energy. I actually asked my colleagues, and I said, so if we all went electric, do we have the infrastructure? And they said no. And then I said, so when are we going to have that? They're like, well, we figure if we shut everything down now and force it to be electric, then we'll eventually get there. It makes absolutely no sense. And this was a public hearing that this was happening.
Yeah, this is, Gavin Newsom's administration to a T. It set out a big lofty goal, make a big fancy headline, but what are the details? Okay, you explain that you want no more gas-powered cars sold in 2035. How do you get there? How do you get everyone into electric? We do not have the infrastructure for it, let alone the grid that we already have is at its capacity, especially with the rise in AI. How exactly are we going to be generating that much more energy for all this? And again, I say this as an owner of electric car. It makes sense for me, but there's plenty of people it still doesn't make sense for.
Yeah, no, and you're right. If you have electric charger at home, it makes a lot of sense. But for most folks, we don't have that. Second is a lot of folks in California also live in apartments and townhouses. What are we going to drag electrical plugs up to the house or to the unit? It makes absolutely no sense. And so and the other part though, Randy, is that, if you charge it at the electric station or the power station, do you know how long that takes? I mean, it could take, unless you do the supercharge, but that's an additional extra cost, right? So this makes absolutely no sense because if every car in California today goes electric, if we all went home at 5 p.m. and charge our car, it shuts down the entire grid of California.
Yeah, it didn't help when we had flex alerts a few years ago as Gavin Newsom was touting, everyone getting into electric car and 25% of electric cars are sold, that when we had the flex alerts, it says, please do not charge your car at this time of day. Well, that's usually when people are charging their cars.
Yep. No, exactly. And so, one, he continues to force more mandates on the oil company. So now we end up with just 9 left. And we're now going to be importing 90% into California, which will drive up the cost. Expert has already said it could go up to $8 a gallon.
Well, and you were there, so you witnessed it. This is coming on the heels of 2 years in a row where Gavin Newsom had special sessions of the legislature to specifically address rising gas prices. But what happened in those special sessions? What did we get out of this? Is the outcome just we've chased away 2 more companies?
Yes. So last year in the Senate, as you mentioned, they called for that ridiculous special session, and all the governor wanted was to punish the oil industry. They ran up through a mandate that refineries had to keep large surpluses to prevent gas spikes. They are not the ones who caused the gas spiking. It's supply and demand, and there's not enough here in California, so they have to import it. And when you import anything, what does that do? It drives up the cost. But importing crude oils and have to refine those crude oils to meet California mandate to be able to sell them in California is a lot more expensive than had we been able to produce it here in California, very fine and actually with great high regulations of it. And so we would have been doing it so much cheaper if we do it here in California versus importing it from Asia, from China, Middle East, or even Ecuador, that we're killing the rainforest. It absolutely makes no sense what we're doing.
Well, and if you look at, the things that Gavin or the legislature will say about climate change, all these things are on a global scale. So how exactly are we making the planet any better by just not producing it here in California, which, by the way, with everything California has done and everything California has done to go green, we still have the worst air quality in the nation.
Yeah, you're right, because we are not even a small fraction of the entire Earth atmosphere. And if we don't force places like China or the Middle East to produce and regulate their production, what we do here won't affect the entire world at all. And it just gets worse and worse. And the part that bothers me is we can talk about wanting clean air, clean energy, and we all do in California. We all want to live in that. We want the future to be that as well. However, it only affects a small fraction of the entire Earth. What are we doing to China? What are we doing to the Middle East? They're doing nothing. They're producing the worst, and yet we're buying from them. So we're no different than what they're doing. We're buying from them, and they're producing it in the worst unregulated system versus what we could have done here in a regulated, highly regulated system.
Well, and not only that, by the way, we're speaking to Orange County Supervisor Janet Nguyen. You can get her online at d1.oc.gov and find out if she is your representative. She represents Cypress, Fountain Valley, Garden Grove, Huntington Beach, Los Alamitos, La Palma, Seal Beach, and Westminster. Not only that, but you look at everything that this state has put forward, and we put forward a lot of plans to go green in the last 20 years, whether it be cap and trade, the fuel mandates that other states don't have, everything we've done to reduce emissions. While we've been working so hard on that, we've been asleep at the wheel on things like making sure that we can put out wildfires. And the wildfires that we've had just in the last 5 years have wiped out all the emissions reductions we've had in the last 25 years.
Yeah, no, I thought, the 65 cents CARB wanted to increase. I mean, Big Brother Oversight Commission, it's honestly, Randy, it's crazy what we're doing in California. We keep on forcing more and more cost to the consumer because everything we're doing is importing it into California. We're not using less. We're using the same number of oil that we need in California, and it's not going to get any better for us. And if we keep on the way we are, all the refineries are going to start shutting down, and then we're going to be importing 100%.
Well, and you look at the breakdown of why it costs so much to buy a gallon of gasoline in the state. You have your state gas taxes, you have your federal gas taxes, but one of the other things that we've had for the past 2 decades here in California is cap and trade. And the whole idea of the cap and trade program is, well, polluters have to offset their pollution by doing something that's good for the environment. So, the grand idea is, okay, if you're going to be refining oil, you need to plant trees in the rainforest. But what are we actually using that cap and trade money on? We're using it on a high-speed train that doesn't exist yet, that won't exist for 20 years at best, and we've just extended cap and trade for another 20 years so we can spend $1 billion a year of taxpayer money that every time they go pump their gas, they're now paying for the high-speed rail.
Yeah, if you look at the California Energy Commission back on October 15th, it shows that we pay $1.94 in taxes and 76 cents in refining costs for every gallon of gas. We pay more for everything in California, whether that is sales tax, property tax, you name it, and that includes our gas tax. Everything we do, we spend more, but yet we don't get anything better out of it. Our roads aren't well done. We are paying billions of dollars on a train to nowhere. And till this day, they can't explain what's going to happen to that train. It's time to shut down the bullet train.
We're speaking with Janet Nguyen, Orange County Supervisor in District 1 and former state senator. Now, Supervisor Nguyen, you left the state Senate last year. You're back in the Orange County Board of Supervisors, but I'm sure just as an observer of what was going on in Sacramento this year, you saw that this year was supposed to be, as Speaker Robert Rivas put it, the year we tackle affordability in California. Well, now the legislative session is over. Gavin Newsom has signed and vetoed all the bills that he was going to sign. Do you think the California legislature achieved their goal on tackling affordability in 2025?
I'll tell you, Randy, from me, no, absolutely not. See, I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, both boys, and boys at teenage age, they eat a lot. My grocery bills are not going down anytime soon, and the cost continues to double or triple. Every day, Californians like myself are not paying anything cheaper. Absolutely not. The legislature has completely failed. I'm going to give them an F.
Well, and to your point on the fact that now we have these refiners closing, and now we're going to have gas prices go up in the next 18 months because of it, that reflects everything, including the cost of groceries, because the cost of transportation gets factored into everything that we buy. Yes.
And remember, electric cars, because electric cars don't have a tax on it, electric cars are also twice the size and weight of a regular car. their impact on our streets and roads are a lot greater, and also in parking structure as well. Parking structure is going to start collapsing if we don't figure something out sooner or later.
There's definitely a lot of things that we haven't thought through, but that is the California way. Supervisor Nguyen, I got one last question before you go. I'm just curious, as somebody that served in the Orange County Board of Supervisors, then went to Sacramento and the Assembly and State Senate. Now you're back in Orange County. How do you feel being back in local government and not being in Sacramento?
I would tell you this, it's a lot more sanity. It's insane in Sacramento, and all I did in Sacramento was pound my head to the wall and try to understand there's absolutely no common sense, nothing logical, and everybody up there, all they do is rule California 30,000 feet above air and not see down how we're living in California. Being back at the Board of Supervisors, I'm local. I get to work directly with my constituent and have a greater impact because we do things that affect individuals in Orange County, and we're hands-on. Sacramento is a whole different ballgame. They just don't understand. They really don't.
Orange County Supervisor in District 1, Janet Nguyen. You can get her online by going to d1.oc.gov. See if she represents you. Supervisor Nguyen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Gail in Garden Grove. Gail, hello.
Hi, Randy. I hope you're having a good day.
Having a great day.
Yes. I'd like to comment on Janet Nguyen's comment of Sacramento just doesn't see what we're all going through. I'm going to have to disagree with that. I think they know exactly what they're doing. And the destruction of California is just honestly unreal. It's so surreal. There's no way you can ignore it. Like let's see this bullet train, right? This speed train that's been going on for decades where, I don't know, possibly over $1 billion is missing. But yet nobody wants to comment on that. And I do understand her frustration that she couldn't get anything done up there. Well, of course you can't because it's a one-party rule and they don't care. As long as they're lining their pockets, their supporters' pockets, and certain Washington individuals' pockets, they do not care one bit about the people of California. That's all I need to say. It's not that they don't see it. It's just that they don't care.
Well, and to that point, it seems like for the most part, the voters who put these people in Sacramento over and over and over again don't seem to care either. They must be happy with what they're getting because we've had one party rule for 15 years. And even though it's been a mess, yes, they keep getting elected.
It's unreal. It is. And I'll tell you that, I live in Orange County and there are a lot of Republicans here, lots. Okay, but the ballot harvesting that goes on, if you look at the counts after the ballot harvesting, it always goes for the Democrat. So, that's a little bit, conspicuous, I'm going to say. And honestly, if things don't change in 10 years, you could kiss California goodbye. I really believe that. People will leave, uproot their families, and go.
Oh, if the state continues to be as unaffordable as it is, everyone who's raising kids here, their kids cannot stay here. That is a fact of life, and everything we're doing to tackle that hasn't panned out. They've passed stuff every single year. It was supposed to be the silver bullet was the ADU law and the splitting your lot law. Now it's SB 79. If we actually don't see it cheaper to live here, everyone's kids are moving to Arizona, Nevada, and Texas.
I agree. I'll tell you, I have two kids, one 8 and one 12 that I am responsible for. And I'm already looking at the costs because, he wanted to go to Chapman College over here in Orange, right? And I'm like, there is no way that I can afford that. And I'm not going to have him taking out these government loans. So we got to figure something out. And that's with scholarships through golf that we're looking at. So it's just unreal. One, our electricity keeps going up. The gas is going to go up. That our food goes up because we import it. They're closing down our ranchers who produce beef. Well, of course your beef's going to go up. And our other ranchers that produce fresh vegetables, fresh melons, things like that. Because we have this fish we have to save. So everything that's imported in, people in California want to complain. Oh, our prices. Well, you're not looking at the whole picture, and you don't want to. A lot of people want freebies. They want everything to be given. They don't understand what they're doing, but they may if they see New York full. So let's hope somebody wakes up. Oh my gosh, please. But
we'll do our part every single day. Gail, I love your passion. Call us anytime. Thanks so much for the call. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222, your emails at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. It's almost been a year since the LA County Board of Supervisors declared a state of emergency, something they do a whole lot. This was a state of emergency based on the conditions at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall. And I covered that. I think it was filling in for John Phillips. And I covered that and just kind of asked to open up the phones if anyone wanted to call in and tell me what was going on down there. Because the situation that was going on was that the supervisor said, well, we're in violation of all these things from the state and all of these mandates because we're having constant staffing shortages. So many staffers are calling out. And so I just asked the question, it's radio. You could be anonymous. Can people call in? Tell me what's going on there. Why are so many people calling out? Why are so many probation employees not wanting to work at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall? And I was dumbfounded. I remember that show to this day. And then we continued it in the 5 o'clock hour here. And we had probably over a dozen, maybe 24 people call in and tell us their experience working inside that facility. A lot of the people there had been with this department for 20 plus years. A lot of them were field deputies who, because of the shortages, have been forced to transfer into the juvenile justice department, something they're not trained for. And when they got to those facilities, they found out that thanks to recent regulations from the Probation Oversight Committee, they weren't really allowed to stop fights between youth inmates. They weren't allowed to defend themselves when they were being attacked, weren't allowed to use pepper spray. And the clientele that makes up the people that are housed in a place like Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall are a lot older and a lot more dangerous than you would think, because the 4 years that George Gascon was the district attorney,
we got some wobbly knees allies.
He wouldn't prosecute any juvenile as an adult. So what does that mean? That means you can have an 17-year-old gang member who gets arrested for murder, and George Gascon won't try them as an adult, so they go through the juvenile justice system, and they will serve inside Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall until they're 26. And that has made it an incredibly dangerous situation. And to this point, it's been almost a year. That state of emergency, which spent money on ads for probation to hire more people, that didn't work. Bonuses, that didn't work because people were afraid. They were also afraid to speak out, and the union didn't have their back. And you had a lot of them that were literally out on disability or out on injury because they got hurt on the job from the violence that is in these places. So then you go to the beginning of this year. Rob Bonta puts out this bizarre case where he says that a bunch of the employees at Los Padrinos were involved in boy fights, where they called it gladiator fights, but I like to say boy fights, where I guess the allegation is that the officers were betting or riling up the different inmates to beat each other up and everyone was watching. Who knows? It's very confusing. And then a few months ago, Rob Bonta decides that he is going to file as Attorney General to place LA County probation and the juvenile justice system in LA County into receivership. Because, and I think everyone can agree, the current people in charge, whether that be the current chief of probation, Vieira Rosa, who wanted to retire and then they wouldn't let him, and he's a mess. The Probation Oversight Commission's a mess. And the Board of Supervisors has no idea what they're doing. So I think everyone agreed receivership might be a good idea. In fact, it was the board themselves are like, great, take this off our hands. Well, the reason I bring you all of that is because of a story that was published in the Pasadena Star News that several of you sent to me that I did see over the weekend. See, they're in the process of finding who this receiver is going to be, the person that's going to be put in charge to get this facility back into working order where everyone can feel safe, not just the inmates, but the employees. And can I just read you some of this? This comes from Jason Henry at SoCal News Group. Michael Dempsey, the veteran corrections officer the state wants to put in charge of LA County's juvenile facilities, has spent 40 years in the industry, including running a maximum security juvenile facility in Indiana. But like many of the staff working at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, even he fears for his safety during visits to the troubled facility. Dempsey described probation officers' frequent concerns about violence in the juvenile hall as real, true fears during testimony on Friday at a court hearing to determine how to address this receivership. Dempsey, who testified, quote, "It takes a lot for me to walk into a facility and feel fear. And that's what happens to me when I walk into LP." Dempsey is currently the independent court-appointed monitor who is supposed to oversee the compliance with a lawsuit that was supposed to make sure that this facility was in all the state regulations, which it's not. But you have a huge staffing crisis. You've got the violence. You have the overdoses, which actually goes back to Barry J. Neidorf, this is the most, if you want to know how screwed up the juvenile justice system is, you want to know how screwed up some of the lives are of the people that are involved in that. Los Padrinos, Barry Neidorf, the camps, they all have a no hugging policy. I'm not making this up. You're not allowed to, if you're the parent of a juvenile inmate, you are not allowed to, when you visit them, give them a hug. And do you know why? Because a few years ago, a mother hugged her son at Barry J. Neidorf in Sylmar, and she passed him fentanyl, and he died of an overdose. You can't make it up. A mother gave drugs to her son, and he OD'd in there. It's been very easy to get drugs in there. We've seen overdoses this year, not just by the way of inmates, but also of contracted staffers. And what do you know? The one thing that is good to see here, as now there's more attention being put on about this. One, love to see this article being written. Hope we can see more. But I love that the guy that's going to be the receiver is actually testifying and admitting what the Board of Supervisors would not admit in all of their emergency hearings, which the Probation Oversight Commission doesn't want to admit, that the heart of this issue is staff wellness. People who don't show up to work, they don't do it because they don't feel safe. And would you really want to keep going back to your job if you were fearing for your life every single day? You've had friends that are still out on disability. That's why this department has a 36% vacancy rate. And all of the ads in the world are not going to fix that. All of the promotional campaigns, even all the retention bonuses, you're not going to get people to transfer from Orange County. By the way, with all the recruiting that's been going on, and this is true, in 2024, 2/3 of all the new hires at LA County Probation left within a year. And then, of course, the other end of the staffing crisis is because they've been pulling everybody off of field deputies and throwing them into the juvenile hall, which, by the way, all of this is to take care of like 300 of the baddest apple kids in LA County. It's not a very large population, but it is a population which we don't really know what to do with anymore. But because we pulled so many field deputies off of that, what has happened? Well, there's a whole lot less people out there checking up on you if you're on probation, if you're on parole, if you're on an ankle monitor. And that has definitely led to the crime problems that we have seen in Los Angeles County. 800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. You know, today is the end of an era here at the News Blitz as we're saying goodbye to our screener, Kelly. Kelly has been taking your calls. She's been giving you concert tickets. She has been a delight to work with. And as I always say, the best ones at this job don't last very long. She is moving on to a better opportunity, and we're going to miss her, and we wish her the best. But one last time, let's have Kelly give away some concert tickets. 790 KABC welcomes Jeff Tate's Operation Mindcrime, the final chapter at the Canyon and Agora Hills on November 15th. Tickets are on sale now at AXS.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by the Canyon, where music meets the soul. Good luck dialing. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. You know, speaking of milestones, I got to talk about my experience this weekend. I don't know if you're aware, but for the past 14 weeks, I've been on this weight loss plan. It's for a client we had up in the Bay Area, but I hit 50 pounds this weekend. In 14 weeks, I have lost 50 pounds. And that's pretty incredible because I have gotten to the point where all the clothes that I have been wearing do not fit. And I guess that's the fun part of all of this, is finally getting to do something that we never do on a weekend, and that was go shopping at a mall. I mean, my wife and I do plenty of it. Take the dog to the outdoor mall and then sit on the patio. And it's always a good time. But even though I do love my Westfield, or whatever it's called. Yeah, the Westfield Topanga? No, Topanga Village. Love the Topanga Village. Love to take the dogs to a restaurant. They got a great Total Wine in there. They got a great Sur La Table. They got a Crate and Barrel. It's not really a whole lot of clothing stores in there. So on Saturday, wife and I had lunch, a little celebration, maybe a cocktail. But things are a little different now. Instead of what we used to order, we went to Eureka and we split a smash burger, split an appetizer, and had one cocktail each. The bill, which for, again, this is California we're talking about, after tip was under $80. I was like, okay, this is working out. And my stomach has shrank, so that was plenty of food for me. But after we walked the dogs around for a little bit, we dropped them off and then drove right back out to Woodland Hills to go to the actual Westfield Topanga, which I haven't been in a mall like that in a long time. And there is quite an amazing feeling of knowing that for many years you are relegated to the big and tall stores and knowing that you can shop at a mall again. I'm not used to this. For many years, I have shopped almost exclusively at DXL, and there happens to be one in Woodland Hills, and I love them. And I felt so confident in the clothes that I bought when I was 80 pounds heavier that I think that was one of the catalysts to me feeling so good about myself that I started to lose weight. But the thing is, once you get below a 1XLT, they don't really have any more clothes for you. So now I'm in this situation. I still have a lot of, casual button-down shirts that fit kind of. At some point, I'm going to have to replace those. I do have a bunch of old t-shirts, and I'm wearing one today that I haven't worn. I've worn this shirt, and it fit badly many times. I used to wear this shirt, and my tummy would stick out almost like I got a bare midriff going on. But today I put on a t-shirt I haven't worn in 6 or 7 years, and it fits better than it may have ever fit since I've ever had this shirt. That felt pretty good. But we were in the Topanga Village, and we went to the Lucky Brand jean store, and that has been my jean guy for quite a while. I grew up as a Levi's kid, but I don't remember how, I don't remember why. My wife was like, try Lucky Brand. I think you'll like them. And when I first started going to Lucky Brand 5 years ago, I was a size 40 jean. Then a few years ago, I got down to a 38. Last year, before I started this diet plan, I had done a pretty good job of losing some weight. I went from a 2XL to a 1XL, and I had gotten to the point where I was a 36-inch waist jean. And I knew, because I was at the end of my belt's length, that it was time to get new jeans. And I try on the 34s. I'm like, yeah, these seem okay. But let me try on the 32s. I can't even remember the last time I was a 32. It's wild. And they fit great. I'm like, wow, they don't look loose. The crotch area fits all right. I felt so good in this pair of jeans. And while that experience was happening for me, in the dressing room next door, my wife was having the exact same experience, except even more so. Because she's also been on this program, and she's also lost as much weight as I have. And she's like, I haven't been able to go to a store like this since high school. So it was a pretty confidence building weekend. And now we're at the really fun part of this, is it's time to rebuild the wardrobe. But now I legitimately don't know where to shop for like shirts and stuff, because I've been going to one store forever, and now I'm sized out of that store. So that's going to be part of the adventure. I did buy a very nice 1X button down that fits very well on me when I was in Santa Fe at this fancy gentleman's store called Lancaster, York. And I wore that to our big fancy dinner. But yeah, buying clothes that fit. Now, I'm not throwing away any of the clothes. I've done that. I've made that mistake before. We're going to put everything in what we're calling a fat box, just in case we need it. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, but I believe that what we've done, the way that we've done it, this one is sticking around. This is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And yeah, time to buy a whole bunch of new clothes. So that's fun. Hey, thank you all so much for listening to this show, for being a part of it, for calling in, for emailing your stories. Always appreciate that at randykabc@gmail.com. One more time, let's say farewell to our screener, Kelly. It was gone too soon. Fantastic. One of the best screeners I've ever seen. And yeah, it was... she's moving on to bigger and better things. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.